midweek and mid-season 2025 NFL mock draft review. I did a mock draft that me and Keith are going to break down what are the interesting quarterback landing spots. Is only 2 of them. No other quarterback made the first round cut. We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duel that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content each and every single day, man. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. And today is not just any day. It is a mock draft review, and it's DP's, yes, my guy, Mr. Damian Parson. It is his mock draft review, and we have some topics, right? We're going to talk about quarterback landing spots, right? Where did DP think the top quarterbacks in this 2025 NFL draft should go? I'll tell you this, they both went in the top 5. We're going to talk about those teams coming up next. Then we have 3 tight ends in round 1. Yes, I'm going to ask him about that. Are the tight ends those type of playmakers? And then Ashton Genty, right? Mr. Heisman candidate himself. He went to the Minnesota Vikings. DP, let's get into this quarterback landing spot conversation.
This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Keith, I decided to do a midweek mock draft. Shout out over the PFF's mock draft simulator. I used theirs to kind of, do this mock. And number 1, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, wide receiver, cornerback from Colorado going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I didn't do any trades, contemplated it, but I was like, it gets a little messy. At pick 2, Shedeur Sanders to the Tennessee Titans. At pick 3, the Cleveland Browns select Cam Ward. At pick 4, Las Vegas Raiders. They need a quarterback, but I didn't feel comfortable giving them one, so I gave them the best playmaker on the board for me, Torrey McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. At number 5, the New York Giants also need a quarterback, but they go best player available and get Mason Graham, defensive lineman from Michigan. Patriots find their left tackle and Kelvin Banks Jr. at pick 6. The Jets, we don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers and the ownership and a new coach next year and all that, but I gave him Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan. The Carolina Panthers selected Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State at number 8. The Dallas Cowboys got Will Johnson, number 1 cornerback off the board out of Michigan at pick 9, and then Luther Burton III, wide receiver from Missouri, went to the New Orleans Saints. And Keith, we talk about the quarterback landing spots. When you see Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, when you hear them going back to back, Shedeur Sanders going number 1, being QB1 at pick 2 to the Tennessee Titans, and then Cam Ward following up at pick 3 to the Cleveland Browns. What's your initial thoughts on those picks and those landing spots?
My initial thoughts is right, and not on the picks, but as far as the landing spots, because it's just Tennessee and Cleveland, right? We want to see them go to New York and Las Vegas, right? One of those one of those spots like that, just a little bit flash and dash. But the actual selection of the pick, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans, right? Let's talk about their head coach, Brian Callahan. I get the Brian in the Bills, right? As far as Bill Callahan, offensive line coach. I just try to make sure that I get that right. So I look at it from the perspective of he came from operating with Joe Burrow, right? And then he needs a time and an anticipatory thrower. And I think Shedeur Sanders is both of those. This Tennessee Titans offensive line, they're trying to rebuild. They've put investments to it, and it still needs to get a little bit better, right? And I think he can help with that. But then also, you look at the wide receiver core, I think they're going to continue to build on that too and make the proper investments. And because he came from Cincinnati, I think he understands, talking about the head coach, right, to be able to talk to the general manager, like how important is it to put investments into that wide receiver core. So I expect them to continue to build that out also, I mean, they did it for Will Levis, right? Tried to get him DeAndre Hopkins. They got him Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, right? They have the tight end Ngwanko.
Chigo Quanko,
Ngwanko, right? And they went and signed a running back. So I think that they try their best to fit stuff around Will Levis, and I think they'll continue to make that investment. So the Titans one I like. Cam Ward, I think we talked about before, right? Going to the Cleveland Browns. I like that one also. Running game, healthy Nick Chubb, play action. He doesn't have to have everything on his shoulders, right? And then he can get the ball down the field. Obviously, they got rid of some playmakers, Amari Cooper, things like that. But I think there's still enough on this team to be able to make some things happen.
Oh, 100%. I think with Tennessee, as you talked about, man, even though Will Levis has looked a little bit better the last 2 weeks since he came back off, I think it was like a shoulder injury that had him on the bench for a couple weeks. The last 2 games, he's looked solid, right? But at the end of the day, he's still a vertical passer that wants to live down the field rather than like playing the way that this offense is structured. And we talked about that in the offseason. All right, you bring in Brian Callahan. Does Will Levis' mentality as a passer fit this offense? And the answer was no for us. Like Joe Burrow, he'll throw the ball down the field to Jamar Chase, but Joe Burrow operates like a point guard. I'm going to get it to who's open at any level of the 3 levels of the defense. So if it's a 5-yard curl to T. Higgins, I'm going to get it to T. Higgins, let him be big, physical, and strong, and get 5 extra. And now we got a new set of downs. If it's Tyler Boyd back when he first got there, if it's Jamar Chase on the spot concept, whatever it is, he's going to run it to its efficient, to the level of efficiency that Brian Callahan wasn't ran. And with Will Levis, I'm stone-footed in the pocket. I don't move a lot, and I want to take the deep ball. I want to throw it down the field. He has some impressive deep shots, but it's the stuff that, like, for a 24-year-old, 25-year-old quarterback, you need to be able to hit the layups, right? We can look at Anthony Richardson and say, well, he's only 21, 22 years old with 1 year of experience. Brother, you played 2 years in college football, 2 years as a starter. You should be able to hit the layups at a much higher rate than he is right now. So I think Shedeur walks in, and I think that connection between him and Calvin really should get going pretty early in camp, right? Like we know one thing we know about Shedeur. Oh, he can feed his number 1 wide receiver, right? We see that with Travis Hunter. He can feed, but then also he can use that number 1 wide receiver to open everybody else up. So if it is a Chigo Quanko, if it is a Tyler Boyd, I don't know what's going to happen with Treylon Burks. If he's even still in the team come the offseason, we don't know. But if he's healthy, I believe that Shedeur Sanders can get the ball to him as well. And, of course, like you said, with Cam Ward, I just think with having Cedric Tillman starting to ascend now into that top guy role, crazy enough, Cedric Tillman might be similar. Like, he's got a similar body type and everything to Nico Collins. And all it takes is the right situation, really getting him involved in the passing offense and the right quarterback. And now you see a young man take off, but Jerry Jeudy's been playing well with Jameis Winston. They got Elijah Moore that they're going to have to figure out the contract if they're going to pay him to bring him back. And then you got David Njoku. Like you said, Nick Chubb in the backfield. And I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a young running back in this loaded class on maybe late day 2, early day 3, and get them a guy to be like the future after Nick Chubb. But nonetheless, I think those quarterbacks fell into a good spot. I contemplated Jalen Milroe, Keith, to the Raiders. But I was just like, I don't think Jalen Milroe is ready to play right now. And that's a franchise that right now you're in no man's land yet again. Back-to-back drafts, if the draft was today, where you're not inside the area to get one of the top guys. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, let's go best player available at a need. And you lose Devontae Adams, you need another receiver. Let's get to Torrey McMillan. And then what we always talk about, Keith, because you always said, make the team prepared for a quarterback. And when a young quarterback, whether it's the 2026, well, it's probably going to be a 2026 draft, 2026 drafted quarterback walk in and see a room of weapons with Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and Torrey McMillan, you know what I mean? Like, I feel good about that for the room. I feel real good.
Yep, 100% with DP. Let's keep this thing going and flowing with your mock draft, man. And next up, we're going to talk about the 3 tight ends in round 1. Let's have that conversation coming up next.
Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Bilt Rewards comes in. Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. All you need to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com that you need to visit to join today. Guys, never waste a hunch and make every single moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Keith, I went a little spicy in round one, and I put my big three tight ends in round one. All top 20 picks.
DP, I want to get to that, right? But I hope you don't mind if I cut you off. But you mentioned something at the very end, and I think it'll be important, right, to talk about the mock draft and for our Locked On family. You have two quarterbacks throughout the entire first round. Mm-hmm. So I want to just talk about your thought process. Is that where you're at? Like, you don't see a third quarterback getting drafted in the first round at all? Like, was it more top 10 or nothing? Is it because you couldn't make trades? Like, or is just that where you stand with how you're seeing this draft shake out that you don't see any quarterbacks outside of Shedeur and Cam that deserve to go in the first round?
I don't have any. Those are my only two graded first-round picks right now. I do look at Jalen Milroe, and I'm like, it was about finding the spot where he could sit, and I was like, Vegas is not it, even though they have a need. The Giants are not going to be it because we expect, and I think that there's been some rumblings coming out that some of the players in New York aren't happy with how the team is handling the Daniel Jones situation. They feel like it's a money situation. Let's protect him so he doesn't get hurt and we're not held up to the injury clause, which would have to pay him guaranteed money, because I think they might be getting ready to try and cut Daniel Jones this offseason. So it's like, if you don't have Daniel Jones to just kind of buffer the time frame for Jalen Milroe, whoever if they draft a quarterback, that quarterback's probably going to have to play right out the gate. And even if Brian Daboll's still there, and I think there's reports that he's actually coaching for his job, which I think is asinine, considering that you handcuffed him to Daniel Jones. I just didn't see a spot. I contemplated doing the late trade, but again, I didn't do any trades. I was like, maybe the Giants or the Raiders trade back up after going best player available, use that second round pick and a future pick to trade up in the back end of the first and grab a Milroe. But I was like, nah, right now I'm gonna stick with these two quarterbacks. Couldn't find the right spot that I want, for Milroe. At the end of the day, like the landing spots we always talk about, Keith, for these quarterbacks is so pivotal, right? If Brock Purdy went to a team where he got drafted in the second round and he had to start right away, we might not see the same Brock Purdy that we've seen the last 2-3 years in that Kyle Shanahan offense, for one, because he's not with Kyle Shanahan and with the San Francisco 49ers. So I was like, nah, I don't want to put Jalen Milroe in the spot where it wasn't going to be advantageous for him. And it kind of falls in line with Jalen Hurts. You go to the top of the second and you get drafted to a team that's ready to compete, that has all the tools and everything in place for you. So once you step under the spotlight and under the microscope and you're the starting guy, you have a much higher level, a much higher rate of success, a success rate than going to a bad franchise and fans are impatient, ownership's impatient. I didn't want to do that to him.
Yeah, no, I see that. I see that. So let's talk about, right, initially we was going to talk the tight ends, right? And we have
Mhm.
3 in the top 20. All of them are next up. So I don't know if you want to read off the draft picks 11 through 20.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just go with especially with the tight ends landing
Yeah.
spots. Let's talk about it with Colston Loveland at 7. Don't know what's happening with the Jets. Don't know what's gonna happen at all with Aaron Rodgers. But if they kept Aaron Rodgers, I'm gonna just think of that mindset. They need a tight end. They need a playmaker there to like flush out this offense. I think Colston Loveland's the right guy. At pick 15, I don't know how the Colts are now. That's back-to-back years. If this stays pat, they'll be picking 15 overall twice, back-to-back seasons. They got Harold Fannin Jr. tight end out of Bowling Green. And then, at pick 19, the Denver Broncos select Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. And, I just looked at all 3 of those situations. The 15th pick, like the Colts one, I wanted to give him a tight end. And especially because I think my top healthy corners were off the board. You know what I mean? Will Johnson was off the board. We don't know how long Benjamin Morrison, Siobhan Revel, like how long it's going to take those guys to get up to full health and be able to play. Will they be pup candidates once we get to, the season next year? They're out the first 6 weeks. The Colts secondary can't wait for that. You know what I mean? Like their secondary just needs help in the cornerback room. So I went tight end, man. And like that tight end 2 spot, like I have Fannin graded a little higher than Warren, but it's very, very close between the two. It's like 0 point something points. Like they're not separated by much. But those are my top 3 tight ends. I think all 3 of these guys can be high level playmakers at the next level. Of course, we know what Colston Loveland is. We've talked about Colston Loveland since the summer. When I look at Harold Fannin Jr. at 6, I got the official measurements on him. He's 6'3", 232. He's got almost 34-inch arms. They're expecting the test pretty solid and everything as well. And then watching his tape, I'm not gonna lie, he's going into his tape. I was expecting him to be a bad blocker. You know what I mean? Because like just because of he's not 240, he's not. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I don't know. Like, but then I'm watching them block, and I'm like, all right. The only thing I would change for him as a run blocker is getting stronger in the lower half so he can kind of drive and run guys off the spot. But his pass protection blocks, like he's really good as if you're dealing with a defensive line that has like legit edge rushers and your tackles aren't getting it done and you need to keep him in, he can handle that assignment, especially having those long arms. And I just feel like in this offense for the Colts, you got Adonai, you got Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. The one thing they're missing is a true tight end, a guy that can make plays inline, H-back, slot, and that's what you see with Aaron Fannin. They motion him out to X, Z, Y. It don't really matter. He lines up all over the place, and he's a good route runner. He separates, and he's got some of the best hands. I think he has either a less than 1% drop rate. Like he grabs everything thrown in his direction, and he's proven to be a high-volume target.
Yeah, DP, I look at these tight ends, right, and I think there's like different categories. I think Colston Loveland with the Jets are the biggest IDK in the entire NFL, right? When it comes to the draft right now, who knows, right? Week after week, they do something like I've never seen a more reactionary franchise than what we're seeing right now, right? You start all the way from the top. Oh, no, we're not going to pay what's the edge, Hassan Reddick? We don't want him. We're not going to pay him, right? Then they start losing games. Come get your money, Hassan.
What's our guy? Our guy from Florida State that they drafted,
Jermaine Johnson.
He got hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think he's out for the season.
Yeah.
Pass rush didn't look so good. It was like,
let's pay him,
go ahead.
Right? Oh, man. Devontae Adams been linked to us all summer. Nah, we're not sending that trade pick. We're going to wait. Oh, we lose 5 games? All right, let's go get Devontae Adams, right?
And we're going to take on his entire salary.
Yeah.
And we take on his salary cap.
Fire Robert Saleh. It's all type of craziness. So at
the GM,
IDK, I think Colston Loveland is worth the draft pick, right? You know, you talk about like draft points and slots and things like that. I think that he's worth the draft pick. I think he's that type of talent. I like him a lot. Then I look at the Indianapolis Colts one, probably my favorite fit of the 3 tight ends, right? I really like that situation with Anthony Richardson, giving him another piece, right? And now another person in the middle of the field, but also the versatile things that you can do with Harold Fannin, right? I think he can line up as the H-back. Like he's a former defensive end. He has a very gritty mentality to where I think, he'd be able to run block. And I think about a backfield you start running some pistol sets and different things like that, and you got A. Rich, Howard Fannin, and Jonathan Taylor, things could get interesting, right? I really like that situation. And then the one where I say is probably the most necessary is probably Tyler Warren with the Denver Broncos, right? Because they just need help. They need help however you could get it. And honestly, what I believe, what all of the wide receivers are off the board, the top 3, right? If you consider Travis Hunter a wide receiver also, and then you ask yourself, what's the next best offensive value piece? It's probably tight end, right? Like the tight ends ranking higher than the wide receivers at this point. So I like all 3 selections when it comes down to the tight ends. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. And we have to talk about the guy that toasts the rock, right? We see all type of comps. You compared him to Trent Richardson. I think we got a tweet that compared him to Ray Rice and Maurice Jones-Drew, right? So we have a lot of different comps, and we're talking about Mr. Ashton Jeanty, and he went to the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to have that conversation, and I'm going to pick out my favorite pick of these last 20 through 32 picks. We're going to talk about this coming up next.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I want to take a moment and thank my therapist, someone in my life that has been so pivotal to me finding myself and being the best version of myself, especially most of the 2024 year. Since February and me starting these sessions, she's really helped me take my life to another level. This month is all about gratitude. And along with the person I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to think enough, ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including you, yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers at pick 28 in my mid-season mock draft. The Minnesota Vikings select Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State. We kind of talked about it a little bit when we did the second topic yesterday on yesterday's show, Keith. We talked about Ashton Jeanty in totality and what he is as a prospect, where we tier him, amongst the draftable or drafted running backs in the last decade and everything like that. And I said it, man. My thought process was simple. I got to get him in the first round, number one. Number two, you put it like, and this is a need. This is a position of need. Aaron Jones still showed, I still got juice left. I still can get the job done, but at the same time, he still battles some injuries and things like that. Ty Chandler is a solid change of pace back, RB2, 3-ish guy. Mm-hmm. Ashton Jeanty walks into this offense, and he's the guy out the gate. And for him to, and I want to do him a service. You walk out of the huddle, and you get to take a deep breath because you see 2 high safeties, right? You see 2 high safeties. You counting the head count in the box. You're like, 7? I don't know if I've seen that since maybe Pop Warner, like you get a 7, maybe 8-man front, depending on the actual formation of the offense. And I just think that this helps. Number one, it helps him get acclimated to the NFL because he has more space to work, but it also helps JJ McCarthy, who then you think about putting them in Pittsburgh. Same thing we talked about the last topic, Keith, with Anthony Richardson, Harold Fannin, and JT. You got a really mobile quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, who you can then go into pistol sets, shotgun sets with Ashton Jeanty. You get some QB zone read, different things like that going. It opens the playbook for Kevin O'Connell. You know that coming from that system and scheme that he's been under, none of those coaches, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, for the most part, outside of the few games with Trey Lance, none of them have had a mobile quarterback. And this will be the first time we get to see a mobile quarterback actually be built around in this offense, which is super QB friendly anyway, with Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison. Yeah, I think this right here will make them just a much more even dangerous offense, because now we can run the ball when we want to run it. We got the play action game, and we get the QB run game going. It's going to be very hard to stop that offense once they get going and they're in full rhythm.
All right, DP, I'm gonna make a statement and I want you to respond, right? Because people are gonna look at this mock draft and they're gonna sit there and say, wait, what? Ashton Genty at pick 28? How do you have him going that late? That's what people are gonna say, right? How this guy's a Heisman contender and not a top 15 pick. So those people, you say what?
I say, as I've said before, he's not Bijan, he's not Jahmyr Gibbs, he's not Saquon Barkley. He's a great player. Those guys are game changers with the level of athleticism and speed and burst and playmaking. Now he can catch the ball in the backfield, but this is a different ball game. When you look back, my comp for Jahmyr Gibbs is like a mixture of Jamal Charles and Christian McCaffrey. You know what I mean? Like you can do the different things with him. Bijan's comp is Saquon to an extent, right? Like those guys are just a different tier, and what they're able to do and how they're able to really hurt defenses. I think he is still a really, really talented player, really good running back, but I don't see him as that high end, like top 5 running back game changer as a prospect compared to those guys. So I couldn't, like, for me, and then anyway, for me, running backs are such a luxury pick. I don't want running backs going to the wrong situation or to a bad situation. I put them in the best situation in the first round.
Yeah, and I mean, and that makes sense from the perspective, right? Depending on how you value the prospect. But I think, obviously a lot of mock drafts, right? And I think even one I made, I had him in the top 15 going 12, right? And so people initially, they're going to see that and be like, oh man, well, what's the reasoning? But the reasoning for you makes sense, right? That, hey, he's a good player, but I just don't know if I have him on that level to take him as a top 10, top 15. Real quick, I'm going to talk about a couple of the picks that stood out to me. Princely Human-Milan, right? Seeing him going 22 to the Arizona Cardinals. I thought that was interesting because he's a name. He's been around college football a while, right? I think he's he's one of those prospects to where he's kind of wore out his welcome, right, in the draft community. That we've been scouting him so long that now we just kind of look over him, right? And guys tend to do that. Jalen Walker going to the Commanders at pick 23, I thought was a very interesting situation, right, and how they could potentially use him. But I think when we talk about culture and what the Commanders want to be defensively, he's a culture guy. He's the new version of what this Washington franchise wants to be. And then I look at, who else was it? I like Emeka Egbuka going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think, you comped him to Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? And I like that situation, them having a slot, like a versatile Z type of player. Let George Pickens do all the 50-50 stuff. Let this guy work the slot, be a route runner, but he also has explosiveness to it, the way you could throw that slot fade ball just in case Russell Wilson comes back for another year, baby. Still a country, let's ride. Then my last pick, DP, pick 32. I like that one. Kyle Kennard to the Detroit Lions, putting him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. He doesn't have to step in immediately, be the number one guy. He just kind of could combo pass rush, right, with Aiden Hutchinson, a healthy Aiden Hutchinson. So that's the couple picks in this back end of this draft that stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, the back end, it's a lot of fun trying to, find different find those spots, like those combinations and the trying to address needs. Like pick 31, Ariante Erstry to the Chiefs. I like that one personally because I think you could kick Kingsley to right tackle and let Jawan Taylor walk, and now you have 2 young rookie contract offensive tackles.
Real quick, you got to talk these people off the ledge, man. Eagles fans are going to see another edge rusher from Georgia with limited sack production that everybody's going to tell him he has all the tools. To that, you say what?
I say trust the process. That was a Philly thing anyway, right? You know what I mean? Back with the Sixers, I said trust the process. Like, we've seen, we're starting to see.
I don't think Philly fans want to hear that, DP. They don't want to hear because that didn't turn out well neither. that didn't turn out well, right?
It didn't turn out extremely well. But
1 for 3, 1 for 4, right?
Listen, y'all coined that phrase, you're gonna keep it. Trust the process. I think with Mike Hill, I was like, all right, you put him in this situation. In this defensive line room, he's not somebody that has to play right away, but that he has all the physical ability. Unfortunately, that ankle injury early, like, really limited him, or he missed like 4 games, so that hurt him and everything like that with his development. But that the sky is still a limit for him. It's all about just kind of working on the nuance as a pass rusher. That the Texas game, that's the game that you look at as a scout and say, listen, we can get this out of him. Like if you're a good coach, your D-line coach is good, he's legit, you can get that Texas game out of him more often than not than what Georgia's able to do, because Georgia doesn't do an outstanding job teaching technique to their pass rushers. They just said go be big, physical, and athletic, and that should get the job done. But in the NFL, you're going against grown men. You got to have some nuance and technique. I think I'm seeing a little bit more of that with Nolan Smith now. Him having a pass rush plan and like actually calculating how he's going to beat guys rather than, well, I ran the 4-4. I'm just run and bend around the edge. It was like, no, does that work against Lane Johnson in practice? I'm pretty sure it doesn't. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't work against him. It's not going to work against these other all-pro Pro Bowl tackles. You got to be able to set guys up, move them to the spot that you want them at, and clear your path. And I think he's coming along. The edge rush is still a position for a need for him. And now also with Michael, maybe you do Trayvon Walker him and then just use him all over the D-line and just find advantageous matchups to get after Dak Prescott, whoever's in New York with the Giants. And, of course, you got to get back to the Jaden Daniels or he's going to slice and dice you up.
Yeah, no, I agree. DP, one other spot that I like potentially with Michael Williams would be the Baltimore Ravens, right? I think he can potentially fit into their culture, and they like the edge rushers there. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at the talent code. That right there. Next to me, to my left, Mr. Damian Parson, and you can find him on Twitter at DP_NFL.
Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. And you already know what's coming on tomorrow's show. Make a statement, second-tier prospects, and those sleepers. Guys, we're at week 13. We got 2 weeks left for the regular season and championship weekend and college football playoffs. This thing is going to be over before we know it. So let's embrace it. Let's have fun. But come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.